Two of us are going to answer your questions. So send them in via YouTube, via Twitter, via Facebook, however you're watching this. We want to hear what you want to know, and we want to hear where you're sending these questions in from. So please fire away. But before we do, we got to check in with Deepi. Deepi, how you been? What's going on?
Good. Just came back from the stadium, shot Texans 360. That'll be up Saturday nights at 11 after extra points. And so getting ready for the locker room to open up after practice here in a little bit and do some Zoom interviews. But it's our little water break Wednesday sandwiched in the middle of a very busy Wednesday every single week. I love it.
That's right. That's right. It's presented by Crown Royal. And we want to remind you, send those questions in now because we'll answer them. But Deepi, Patriots come to town, and they're basically coming to town about a week or two within the time they were here last year, and we're in much different circumstances from that.
Yeah, that was just one. I think one of my all-time favorite wins, the win over the Patriots at home, Sunday Night Football. I mean, we didn't know at the time that might be the last time the Texans ever play against Tom Brady, ever.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't know what was going to happen with the Patriots. There was a lot of speculation, as there was every single season for the last few years. But, you know, we faced that Patriots team, beat that Patriots team. It gave the Texans some juice heading into the final stretch of the season. And here we are in 2020, and both teams so different a year ago. Obviously, Cam Newton for the Patriots, no Gronkowski, and then the Texans with interim head coach Romeo Crennel, and so many changes on both sides of the ball, and really struggling in a season that people didn't foresee them struggling in early on.
Yeah, and we have lots of stuff to get to. Pete in Dallas is firing at the hip. Why did the Texans pick up an extra receiver? And I'm guessing he's talking about the draft pick, Isaiah Coulter. And it's a great question. Pete, our thoughts and prayers for you up in Dallas. You're up in Cowboys country. But wide receiver, believe it or not, is a stacked position for the Houston Texans this year. There's a lot of talent, and they didn't think that Coulter, the guy they took, could crack into this group this year. But they think highly of him. They think he's got a bright future. He's got the measurables. He did some really good stuff at Rhode Island, and they do think he's going to be a contributor down the line because there are some contract uncertainties with some of the guys that you have in the current mix. So it was one of those picks that's later in the draft that's not presumed to be a help you this year type of guy. You do find some players like that, and those players are great, but this might be a guy who helps you out in bigger ways down the line. So that's kind of the reason they went with Isaiah Coulter.
Yeah, and I think in every single season, the Texans have seen so many injuries at wide receiver that you just never know who's going to be out there lining up. I think a few years ago, it seems like every year around this time of year, you've got guys that are banged up. Usually Fuller, he's never been as healthy as he's been this year, knock on wood. So, you usually think that he's going to be out for a few games. And then you just never know about the rest of the mix of guys. You had Randall Cobb coming in, who's a veteran guy. You had Brandon Cooks, who's obviously had his share of injuries. So you think, okay, let's pick up a young guy. He can develop under some of these veterans. Unfortunately for Coulter, he hasn't really had a chance to work his way on the field. And Romeo Crennel talked about it this morning in his press conference, whereas some of the rookies on defense, like Ross Blacklock and Jonathan Grenard, are getting extra playing time, extra snaps. It's been a little bit more of a rough go for Coulter because there's just a very crowded wide receiver group, and they're all playing at a really high level. And more importantly, they're all really healthy right now. So for him and even guys like Kiki QT, it's been harder. But this week, the Texans cut DeAndre Carter. So maybe we'll see Kiki make it onto the field a little bit more. I think for Isaiah, it might just be like a red shirt rookie year for him.
All right, Alec on YouTube has this, and it is very simple. What's wrong with the defense? Well, do you have some time, Alec? But basically, they haven't been able to stop the run, and when people have passed on them, aside from Bradley Roby, they've had trouble covering wide receivers. So it's been a big problem. You've got J.J. Watt, who's playing at a J.J. Watt level, but he's just not getting help from the rest of the front seven. And that's not a knock on them. It's just they're not getting to the quarterback like they have in years past. So there's lots of problems. They're going to need to fix that, add some guys in the offseason. But the season's not over, and they're tweaking some things, and hopefully the needle will tick upwards in this week and the weeks to come.
Now, Alec, with the very blunt, shortly worded questions. I like that. You just right to it. Alec, I mean, I think it kind of goes back to last offseason. The Texans were so good at stopping the run last year. So we look back at what's changed from last year to this year. Well, they lost a few veteran guys up front that were really good at stuffing the run. And one of them was DJ Reader. Obviously, he went to the Bengals. He's on IR this year, which is unfortunate for him. He suffered a season-ending injury, but
first season-ending injury he's ever suffered too.
He was always healthy, and I think the Texans had a great steal in him, drafting him in the 4th round several years back. But he was going to command a lot of money, and he wanted to go out and test free agency, and he certainly did when he signed with the Bengals. But I think a guy like that is really hard to replace, and the Texans added several pieces. They also lost Angelo Blackson, who did some nice things for them late in the season last year, blocked a couple field goals, but he was also very stout up front. So the guys that you have left, you've got JJ Watt, you've got Brandon Dunn, you've got guys like that. But I think the loss of some key players from last year to this year, and then with the weird COVID offseason where you didn't bring in a lot of free agents and see what your rookies could do, it sort of was a perfect storm for the Texans to really struggle in the defensive front.
All right, Josh in Australia is watching. So, Josh, thank you for checking us out. We appreciate you down under. I don't know what time it is there right now. It might be tomorrow. I'm guessing it is tomorrow, yeah, because the international dateline. But he's watching in Australia. Daniel from Frisco wants to know, what's the word on the street with the GM coach search? Well, the most recent news came out this morning. Team president Jamie Roots, he's the president of the business operations side, does not do football personnel stuff, but he was on a conference call with season ticket members, and the Texans do those from time to time, a few times per year, and he was answering questions. And one of the things he said this morning is Jack Easterby will not be the GM of the Texans next year. There had been some reports that Easterby would. He's the executive vice president right now on the football operations side. He's the acting GM, but according to Roots, he's not going to be in that role next year. Now, as far as who's going to take his place, Cal McNair is putting together a committee in addition to having the search firm that's looking for coaches, but he's putting together a committee to kind of help advise them on what the Texans should be looking for. And that's going to have some folks who have experience with this franchise, but it's also going to be some outside voices who have no experience with the franchise, but have been around the NFL for quite some time. So they're attacking it from all angles. And that's the most recent news, Deepi, I think we could say.
I mean, I really don't have much more to add to that, Drew. I think you kind of hit all the major bullet points there for the coaching search. So I think the next step might be to find out maybe who might those members of that committee might be that are aiding the search firm and aiding Cal McNair and company and leading this GM and head coach search. And I think that in the next few weeks, in the next few months, we'll have more and more information about it. Right now, though, it's middle of the season. Romeo Crennel was asked about it because there was a report that he might be the head coach next year. And he said, I'm just focused on Sunday. And when the season's over, then we'll look at it then. And I just don't think that there's a lot of reports out there. You can't really put a lot of faith in what's going on out there, because right now it's really just the search firm and they're still like gearing up and putting together their committee to sort of guide and lead that search.
Yeah. Now, I was kind of a ball hog on that answer, so I'm going to give you this answer. It's from Jeremy on YouTube. And Jeremy sends in great questions every week, and we thank you for that, Jeremy. When is David Johnson coming back? Deepi, I'll let you take this.
Yeah, David Johnson was placed on IR last week. He suffered a concussion a few weeks ago in that game against before the Cleveland game.
Jacksonville, yeah.
Jacksonville. Yeah. I'm just drawing like a total blank, and I'm looking at Drew.
It happens, yeah.
Drew's looking left. Yes, against Jacksonville. First drive of the game, suffered the concussion, was in the concussion protocol. So we knew he wasn't going to play against Cleveland, but then he was placed on IR. So guys can come back after missing just 3 games on IR. We don't really know what the status of David Johnson is going to be right now. Maybe they want to see what the other backs have to offer, what Duke Johnson can do. But right now, every time Romeo Crennel's been asked about it, it's been pretty vague about him coming back. I wouldn't expect him back, obviously, until he's missed 3 games now that he is on IR.
All right, Joseph from Houston has one. Will J.J. Watt return next season? Well, Joseph, J.J. Watt's under contract with the Texans in 2021, and I sure hope he's back. You're not going to get better if J.J. Watt leaves. Now, I understand you might be able to trade and get some capital, but I don't want him to go. I mean, he started his career here. He's probably the greatest player in franchise history. He's still playing at a very, very high level. I want J.J. back. I know it looks rough right now. It's 2-7, and there's all sorts of other stuff going on. But things change very, very quickly in the NFL, as we've seen this year. I mean, we led things off talking about how swiftly things changed in the span of a year, less than a year. So I want JJ back, but he's under contract, and that's kind of the most I can say about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I echo your sentiments, Drew, because JJ certainly is a business. He could go anywhere next year, or he could be with the Houston Texans. But I certainly would love to see him finish his career here. You got a chance to meet him when he was drafted, and he got in a limousine and walked into NRG Stadium for the first time during that lockout year. We've certainly experienced some big moments with his injuries and coming back from the injuries and the sack in the Buffalo game. And I'll never forget the month during Hurricane Harvey when, we detoured to Dallas, and he took a video sitting in his hotel room and started up this thing called the Hurricane Harvey Relief Fund, and then went on to raise $37 million. I think that will forever solidify him as a Houstonian, even though he's not native to Houston, but everything that he's done for the city, everything he's done for Texans, everything he's done for this franchise. I would love to see him retire. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He'll probably be in the Ring of Honor here in the stadium one day, but you love to see a story like that end with the same team that started and with a championship. So fingers crossed. I mean, we're just really speculating what happens next year, but I really want to see JJ retire a Texan.
Yeah, and you're talking about retirement with him, and I know you're not saying you want it to happen like after next year, because I think
when it happens,
if he wants to play as long as he wants, he's going to be a wrecker. So hey, retire when you want, but I'd like.
I wasn't trying to rush him into retirement.
I know that. I just want to make sure that the folks watching didn't think anything like that. And you brought up something. Yeah. So while he was doing that, while he was raising money and sent that first video out, I was like doing laundry at my sister's house, a few towns away, because she lives up on the edge of Fort Worth, and I went over and did laundry and took a nap at her house, and he raised like $40 million. So it's just that's pretty amazing stuff.
I was sitting in the same very similar looking hotel room thinking, gosh, I wish there was a way I could help. And he put out that video. And I think the brilliance of it was that any one of us could have done it. Any one of us could have made a little selfie video and put it out there and said, hey, I'm trying to raise money. I'm going to pitch in this amount. Who wants to match me? Of course, we were not going to raise $37 million from athletes and celebrities around the world, but any of us could have started a fund like that. But the fact that, within hours of it all happening, that's kind of what he thought. And I don't think he had I think his initial goal was to raise 100,000. So I don't think he even knew how far that was going to go, but a very deserved Walter Payton Man of the Year moment for him.
All right. It's good stuff. Patricia wants to know, where can I watch the Patriots game? It's on noon Central Time, CBS. So watch it there. Dan wants to know, any plans on allowing tailgating at NRG Stadium? It's not going to happen anytime soon, but stay tuned. And you might see, on a kind of related note, you might see the roof open this Sunday for the first time since 2014.
Oh.
The Birds have told us some of these things. So
should have led with that, Drew. People get very excited about the roof being open in November, December.
As long as the weather's nice enough, they'll probably open it up. And Bethany wants to know, what are the keys to beating New England? Well, let's get a couple takeaways. And there are takeaways to be had with Cam Newton playing quarterback. He's thrown 7 interceptions. He's only thrown 3 touchdown passes, but this guy can run the ball. 9 touchdown runs for Cam Newton this year. He's impressive. And then on offense, I think it will be good being back home. If the roof is open, the worst you have to worry about is sunshine and shadows. But if it's closed, it's a perfect environment, as opposed to what you were in last Sunday in Cleveland with the wind and the rain. And before that, Deshaun Watson in the offense had been on an absolute roll. So go deep, Deshaun, and do it again and again and again and again. Those are my keys, Deepi.
Yeah, I think those are good ones. That's what the Texans offense is predicated on, right? The deep ball. So I'm going to say they have to be able to stop the run. I think this Patriots team is a ground and pound football team. I don't know if that was just from the Ravens game and the weather, but it seems to be working well for them between, you mentioned Cam Newton's rushing TDs, second in the NFL, Damian Harris, Rex Burkhead. They've got a really good running attack. And, I think teams know that the Texans' Achilles heel right now is stopping the run. So you definitely don't want to get yourself in a situation where they get out ahead, get an early lead, and then they're just running the ball down your throat the second half. So I think the Texans need to come out. They need to score early like they did in that Jacksonville game, come out and get a little lead. And you dictate the pace of the game and the tempo of the game and run it the way you want to run it.
All right. Thank you so much, Deepi. Thank you to Andrew Temperley, Tyler Marcotte, and Amanda Caffey for helping get this all together. It's been a Water Break Wednesday presented by Crown Royal. We appreciate you sending in those questions. We appreciate hearing where you've sent those questions in from. So let's do it again next week. It'll be the day before Thanksgiving. We'll be getting set for the Texans and Lions on Thanksgiving morning, 11:30 Central Time. I can't wait.
I can't wait
either. So until then, we will see you all. Watch us on Sunday morning. We're getting ready for the game. Then it'll be the Texans pregame show. Deepi and myself kind of doing the same thing we are doing right now, but we're going to have footage from the field.
Fancier though.
Yeah, it's going to be a big old time. So we can't wait. And we'll talk to you again very, very soon. Thank you so much.